Let me introduce the speaker and panelists for this session. First of all, the moderator of this session is Professor Yum Ha-noong of POSTEC. Can you please stand? Yes, thank you. Professor Yum is the Vice Chair of the National Advisory Committee for Science and Technology, and he works on various policy advices for major policy directions and agenda. Next, Professor Choi Jae-bung of Sungkyunkwan University. He is a former member of the Ministry of Education's Future Education Steering Committee and former advisory member of the National Assembly 4IR Special Committee. As our panelists, we have with us Director Andreas Heinrich from IBS, and also from the Korea University of Technology and Education, we have with us Professor Jin-gu Lee. Thank you for joining us. And last but not least, we have with us Dr. Lee Soo-kyung, Senior Research Fellow of KRIVET. Oh, actually, we have one more person, from a graduate of Johns Hopkins University and a graduate of KAST, Mr. David Gary. Thank you for joining us. So thank you, everyone. And now I would like to hand over the microphone to our moderator, Dr. Yum Ha-noong.
포스텍에서 물리학을 공부하는 염한웅입니다.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Yum Ha-noong of POSTEC. And I would like to thank the organizer of this forum, KIRD, for this opportunity. We'll first listen to the presentation by our speaker, and then we'll go into a panel discussion. Now, the presentation will be given by Professor Choi Jae-bung of Sungkyunkwan University, and he'll be talking about a very interesting topic of phonosapiens. And he will also touch upon the topic of the future talents that we'll be needing in Korea. And then this will be followed by a panel discussion. Please go ahead, Professor.
It's nice to meet you today. So today I'm going to talk about the future human resources in science and technology, and I'd like to talk about 9 different codes that will be necessary to prepare for the change in the future. And so in a short span of time, this is what I hope to talk about. As we heard in the earlier presentation, this revolution is a revolution of the cognition, the intellect. It will mean a change in our civilization. And I think BTS symbolizes that change. Why does BTS represent this change in civilization? Capital and broadcasting had grown the media and the arts right now, but then BTS was actually fostered by their fans called the army. So the rules of civilization has changed, and so civilization is changing. So now the standard has become phones. So over 90% of our public use the smartphones, and about 70% use this for banking and many other activities. And with the onset of COVID-19, it has changed the transactions, the distribution. And so it will be the same for education. We need to foster our talents in a different manner. That is my main message to you today. So let's look at the cause first. Digital transformation. This began because of the smartphone and its birth. In 2007, we had the iPhone released, and in 2009, it reached Korea. And 2010, Korea's Android phone, Galaxy, was released. And so right now, 95% of Koreans use smartphones. For advanced countries, over 70% of them use smartphones. So ultimately, in digital transformation, the essence is that you use smartphones for its various functions. That has become the standard humanity. So that has to be the center, the main idea as we try to change education and science and technology. And this standard humanity is called the phonosapiens. So sapiens means people. Phono means phone. It's a Latin word which means phone. So the smartphone is used wisely to utilize the digital civilization well. Those people are dubbed as the phonosapiens. So if you look at the top 7 companies in the world, they all have created phono sapiens. They created phono sapiens culture, and they will continue to grow according to current predictions. And in fact, if you look at the market cap, that they have, it has all changed. All different industries, taxis, hotel, Airbnb, for financing, phone banking has become the standard now. Broadcasting also, YouTube, Netflix have changed the humanities standards. It's the same for distribution as well. And also, the value of most companies is based on the selection of the consumers. So Kakao and Baemin and many other Korean companies, they were sold at trillions of won. Their prices have doubled right now. So amidst this change, science and technology will have to find a new path into the future. And the cause for that is clear. Humanity has moved its life space into digital platforms. So according to Jacques Attali, the French futurist, he said, if we watch changes in music consumption, we can predict the future consumption. So if there's an urge to consume music, now people immediately open their smartphones and listen to music. And in a matter of milliseconds, you are able to satisfy that urge, and there's dopamine produced. And so when people have that experience, they realize, I can do this for other things. So they do banking with their phones and watch videos on their phones. And so this experience is so overwhelming that 70% of consumers have moved on to this digital platform. So through this process, humanity has moved to digital space. And when we move to digital space, big data and AI become very important. In Korean New Deal, we will build data, digital dam, and others. So all of the urges, the traces of urges of humanity is here in the phones. And so more efficiently, we can attract more people to this new platform. There will be more of such attempts. And it's the same for education. Education will have to change accordingly. So what is the first thing that we have to think about? So in this digital space, people will be living based on this smartphone. So we have to change the standard of our mind. Secondly, we need to understand the change in the civilization. The top 5 companies, they create something based on digital platform, but they always share the knowledge. That is their basic principle. So through this decision, the world right now use open source means to transition to this new digital platform. And so many are using this. So even elementary school students use this open source information to fly drones. We heard in the earlier presentation by Professor Sinofsky and his letter, a fan letter sent in by a young student. And so today, rather than being forced to learn information, now students are able to seek out things that they want to learn on their own. So we are in the era of the sapiens, the wise ones. And so Vitaly Buterin developed the Ethereum very shortly, and Kim Tae-hoon, a graduate of UNIST, had shared this based on open sources, the knowledge that he had developed. So open AI, he's now working for OpenAI right now. The GPT-3 was developed by OpenAI, this company. So future talents, they have to be fostered based on new metacognition. Elementary school students, do you think they can learn about AI, use this technology? Previously, we were in a limited boundary. We set the boundaries of the talents. So what they could do was very limited. But today, we are now sharing information. We are seeking out information proactively. And so we can broaden our range of thinking. So we learn in this new way, and the world has become a digital platform. And so they can also share taxis and hotels, also delivery services through the smartphone. So digital platform-based platform economy has been created as a result. And in that community, a new order is being established. Now it's the consumers that control this new world order, and it is the millennials who control this. They were born in the 1990s, and they have experienced internet from a young age. And based on that, from education to all other sectors, they're changing. So they are experiencing, of course, conflict with the past generation, but now we are wise humans, and so they are wisely resolving these problems to create a new world. Let's look at another example. The Phono sapiens versus Old sapiens. What is the difference between the two? Whenever there's a COVID-19 or other pandemics that happen, we have press releases from the government at 9 in the evening. So for the older generation, they watch television, they read newspaper, they read these press releases to share information. Now it's only 28% of our population that use this method. The rest, they proactively seek out information. So 26-year-old college student Lee Dong-hoon had developed this program on this app on the right side. So, I mean, you cannot have up-to-date information using papers. So if I'm going to visit Gangnam Station, I will just use this app to determine whether there have been some pandemic contacts. So because there is open source sharing, this is possible. And Mr. Hong Jun-seok built a Corona library very quickly. So the daily messages we get from the disease control office, that we can receive that information real time. So we have a very wise humanity creating new civilization. And so the Korean public right now, they don't download the press releases. What do they rely on for information? They go to Corona Lab and other applications to get information. So based on this new civilization, we have to grow and foster our new talents for the future. We're going to hear about Minerva School later on. Half of the curriculum of Minerva is problem solving. So half the students, they live in Seoul or other cities to visit Kakao or Naver personally to see how problem solving can happen. Of course, acquiring knowledge and transmitting knowledge is still important, but compared to that, what is more important is now rising. And so the IT school in France, École 42, there are no curriculum, no teachers there. So self-learning has become an important item for education. So stage 1 is you finish this project on your own. Use shared information, open source information to complete this project. So that is becoming a new goal in education. So we need to foster them newly. So because of COVID-19, the side dish stores, the department stores, they're all experiencing difficulties. So we cannot completely go back to the past anymore. So in this new civilization, we have to find a new way forward. So of course, for the vulnerable, we have to be inclusive. We have to bring them along into the future at the same time. But these are very important in the new era. AI, big data companies, we cannot focus only on these companies. We cannot leave behind those without digital literacy. So because the entire humanity standard has changed. And so if we're going to do a side dish store also, for example, now you have to think about the technology side, AI, and many others. So the fourth code to think about is resilience. Because of COVID-19, we are experiencing a lot of difficulties. So here, by transitioning to digital civilization, we will be able to prepare for the future. So I talked about the mind so far, and from now on, I'm going to talk about the changes in the rules that shape the world. The first is that we are in the era of the consumer power. So it's called the fandom power. So it was ARMY which grew BTS, and that is applied in almost all markets, in broadcasting also. So this YouTubers have become very influential.
것보다
What's interesting is that we spend more time criticizing than learning. 보람이, she's a famous YouTube creator. She's 6 years old. She earned 3 billion won per month. But actually, she received a lot of criticism after the news went out that she's making a lot of money through her YouTube videos. So people are not trying to learn about what she's achieved, but they're busy criticizing her. 보람, she has 269 million subscribers. So it's a little bit behind than Ryan, the world's most famous child or adolescent YouTuber. But this young Korean YouTube creator is attracting the attention of so many young people. Why? Because her contents are interesting. And also, this YouTube channel that she has is much more influential than the terrestrial television channel programs targeting the 6-year-olds and the 5-year-olds. Already kids like 보람이, they're changing the world. So what received a lot of attention, for example, was her in a YouTube video making 짜파게티, which is a type of ramen, instant noodles. So that sold very well. She earned a lot of money through advertisement because of her videos. In the past, you had to go seek out the advertisers and you had to put in a lot of effort. But if you have good content, the advertisers will come to you in this modern era. So the people, these talents, they are actually attracting attention from all over, from various industries. And also, for example, the beauty industry, Dr. Jart, for example, this brand has a lot of fans. It's not only the beauty industry, but many other industries as well. They have big fans, and this leads to fandom culture. So with the support of the consumers, these brands, and also BTS, they have grown into this powerful mega existence or brand, and they're very influential in these very many different industries. So number 5, this is the code 5, you have to have people come to you. This is called fandom. And from makgeolli, traditional Korean alcohol, and also the Korean traditional crafts, you can see that there is this fandom for many different items and brands throughout. It's very famous, very trendy. Consumers, they like what they see, and this leads to the creation of fandom. And so science and technology also has to learn from this kind of fandom. There's a lot of diversity today. Everything has potential to further grow. And so you can attract the attention of many people because they have diverse interests. And Korea is doing very well in garnering the attention of many people because of these diverse aspects that Koreans have been showing to the world. For example, Baby Shark of Pinkfong. This is absolutely very popular around the world. And this is actually a very small animation and contents made by Smart Study. This is a very small company here in Korea, but it has led to a massive fandom around the world. And why is it that this Baby Shark is so famous? It's because it has solid contents and also webtoons of Korea. Very famous, popular around the world. It's doing better than the animations of Japan, which used to be much more famous and popular than the Korean contents or animations. So one webtoon has earned about 4 billion won. Also, Hollywood is showing interest in these webtoons of Koreans. So there's a lot of potential for further growth and development in this area. Fandom has led Korean contents to have global recognition and global influence. So science and technology field also has to learn a lesson from these cases. Fandom is very important. You have to make consumers your fans. In order to do so, you need to provide good experience. And also, you have to have quality content. It's something very good to offer. You also have to be authentic. And also, you have to be able to engage in close communication with the consumers. So you have to work with those who can help you to provide something or offer something that will appeal to the people. So you need to have something really good, something with great quality. quality. Because with that, you will be able to be chosen by the consumers. That's what I mean by you have to have good content, so you have to have something really with high quality. So, Korea now. Korea's outstanding technology. It's the first to roll out 5G. And the young people are very tech savvy. In the past, actually, people, they just wanted to go out and buy Apple phones. They didn't want to try out new phones. They just wanted Apple because Apple had given them good experience in the past. But now, actually, we have a lot of phones that are being sold at a very low price compared to Apple, but nevertheless, these people, the young people especially, they wanted to just buy Apple based on their past experience because their good experience led to this solid fandom for Apple products. And also Tesla. There's this big fandom for Tesla cars, right? And that's why a lot of people just want to buy Tesla cars. Also, Amazon. A lot of people just want to purchase their goods on Amazon because of their past experience or because of fandom. And also Netflix as well. They don't want to try something new because they already have created this fandom for Netflix. So, Korea's hardware is outstanding. It has outstanding technology to build good phones and excellent goods and products. But because of past experience that has led to fandom, people are not selecting these Korean-made goods sometimes. So, Dr. Lee Yoryong, he said that in order to win the hearts of people, you have to be able to empathize with others. And in order to have empathy, you need humanity. So today, everything is transparent in this digitalized world. You need to win the hearts of people with ethnicity and also with humanity. So I think that this is a very important asset as we nurture our children. The contents of Korea, however, nevertheless, has been able to appeal to people. Some of the contents, like I explained before. For example, the Korean films. We have films that have gained immense popularity because it touched the hearts of people. It was able to empathize with people around the world. So we have to change the standards of our thinking. Korea has outstanding technology, we have outstanding infrastructure, and there's a lot of innovative companies in this era, but only a small number of them have succeeded in the world. Why is that? Well, Samsung has the world's greatest technology compared to Apple. It has better memory, it has better products, but why is it that the company value falls behind? Why is it that the company value stays at that level that you see on the screen? It's because it lacks fandom. Now, Steve Jobs explained that iPhone is a cross of technology and humanity. So what he's emphasizing is that technology is not everything. Providing the right experience to the people is the core of what Apple is offering to the consumers. That is what he emphasized, and that led to the legendary success of Apple. Japan's greatest company, Toyota, has a worth of 240 trillion. Now, in this new era of phonosophians, well, we have to learn to grow fandom. The young people, the M and Z generation, they go to the platforms of their choice and they enjoy and consume the contents on these platforms. They resort to fandom. Code number 9, authenticity. Now, in order to develop fandom, what do you need? You need to have a good motto. You need to have consistency in pursuing this motto throughout your life. That leads to fandom. And I think that that is a very big lesson as we try to develop human talents. I believe that Korea has great potential. It will do very well. What laid the foundation for Korea's development was science and technology. I think that the miracle of Korea was actually made possible because of the talents in the field of science and technology. So I think that because Korea has a history of making miracles, we will be able to once again create another miracle. So The thing is, however, the rules have changed. Up till now, well, people thought that we needed the right specifications and we just had to develop the technologies. But now we have to win the hearts of people. We need to develop the fandom. We need to attract the people and the consumers and be able to attract them and have all of that really inside our technology. So if we can capture all of that into our technology, then I think once again we can create a miracle. We have done so well up till now, but I think as the humanity has changed over the years, I think that we also have to change. We have to change our science and technology field. And if so, then Korea's science and technology will develop into a civilization that everyone wants to learn more about. We have done so well. Korea science and technology field, you have done so well. In the future, I think if you focus on what is needed to meet the challenges of the future, we can do even better. I'm sure that we can live up to this challenge. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Professor Chejeboo.
그리고 감동.
That was very moving, very interesting presentation. This is unexperienced, unprecedented world that we are in right now, and you use the idea of fandom to explain it, and you also talked about what kinds of HRST education we need in the future. So consumer market, fandom can be used to move the hearts of the consumers. That's also a very interesting point for us to think about. So thank you very much for that. The topic of this session, which can be represented through fandom also, is about the DNA for the Korean human resources, what kinds of talents we will need in the future. And so the Korean human resources, I think an outsider's view can be more objective sometimes. So we have two guests from overseas. We have David Gary. You've seen him on television quite often, so we'd like to listen to his view also. So he has received higher education both in the US and in Korea, and I believe he's preparing for a startup in Korea, does a lot of media activities also. The innovators, those people, the talents that we need to foster in the future. So from your perspective, Mr. David Gary, I mean, what is your perception? How do you see how we should grow them? What is the current situation of education in Korea also?
I went to college in the States, and then I came to Korea for graduate school, and I can say that there are some similarities between the two systems, and there are also some differences. But going through both systems, what I've realized that Korea does particularly well is efficiency. So in terms of getting things done, the speed at which things are done in an efficient manner is very, very impressive. But at the same time, what I've felt being in the system is that from early on, there could be more of an emphasis on creativity. And so with the emergence of AI, as we move towards this system in which things are going to be able to do things for us, for example, AI can, for example, act as teachers, they can act as mentors. The thing that will differentiate AI and normal people, in my opinion, is creativity. And so, in my opinion, from this moment on, focused from elementary school more on creativity would in turn present a source of a market of people that can actually differentiate themselves from AI and actually add value to the system. So that's sort of my view on AI and what sort of the Korean system could focus more on in the future.
Yeah, thank you, David. 다음으로는
And next, also my friend doing research in the same field. My friend, the director of IBS, Andreas Heinrich. Well, he's German, but spent a lot of time in the US at the IBM lab. He worked there for a long time. And also, he's a renowned scholar in the field of nanoscience. So Andreas, he's been here in Korea for how long?
4.5 years.
4.5.
He's been here for 4.5 years, and I think that he has experience the R&D field here in Korea for quite some time.
R&D system, and then the Korean scientists and engineers, how you look those people.
Yes. So first of all, thank you, Hanung, and thank you for the invitation to be here. Of course, I came to Korea not as an educator as much as a scientist. I came here to take the opportunity to create an IBS center and do world-class research. But of course, as an IBS center, we also educate a lot of people. I happen to be at Ewha Women's University, which you all know is a university where every graduate is female, and I specialize in the field of physics and some chemistry, which is traditionally not very women-oriented. So it's a great opportunity to train the future generation of Korean female scientists. And this is an additional bonus that I did not really anticipate before I came here. So my personal take on education is I do not learn well from large classes. I learn very well on one-to-one instruction. I can give you two examples for myself. I was trained as a physicist, and in high school I had like an advanced placement course in physics. We were only 10 students in this class, a very excellent teacher who did not teach us from textbooks, but who taught us from learning by experiments. Very small groups, interactively learning what the formulas mean, discussing everything, very creative way to teach. This was, I hate to say it, this was 30 years ago or more even, right? But that person did not use AI, he did this by himself, creating a very interactive and excellent learning education. During my university time, I have to say I didn't learn very much, because a teacher standing in front of the class teaching is not something that is conducive to my personal learning. So I learned once I go to the laboratory, and I learned from the older students, from postdocs, and from senior scientists working in the laboratory. That's when I get motivated, and that's when I open the textbook to actually learn more about what I need to learn. And so I'm very frustrated actually that nowadays, if you look at Korean universities and essentially all universities around the world, we still teach in the same way. We still have the professors standing up front, you know, writing the same contents on the board that we did 30 years ago. That is unacceptable, I think. We really need to change. We need to utilize the professor, like myself, for one-on-one instructions or small group discussions, and not about teaching the main content of what is physics, right? This is something that other professors can teach much better in these online courses, but then it comes to the student to ask questions, and for me to help the student to discover what really is science and what are the interesting questions to ask, right? And this you can only do in one-on-one discussions. So I really hope that we can structure the future learning better, not using resources like us professors sitting here to do the same old tasks that we did 50 years ago, but to use other tools to do the basic science, you know, not basic science, but the very basic instructions, but use us for what we are best at, for discerning what is interesting from what is not so interesting, to answer questions and have discussions. So I do believe there is a lot of potential for us to change the current education system.
Thank you very much. 시간이 좀 많으면
If we had more time, then we could really link the statements from our panelists to have more in-depth discussion, but we do have very limited time, so thank you very much for that. We will have to go on to the next panelist. So I think it's up to the audience to try to absorb what has been stated right now. We have two panelists from Korea, and they are in charge of the fostering human resources right in the country. They've been in this field for a long time. So first we have Dr. Soo-kyung Lee from KRIVET, Korea Research Institute for Vocational Education and Training. So she will talk about Korean human resources. As Professor Choi Jae-bung has mentioned, the issue of fandom will be very important in considering fostering human resources. How is our society going to give acknowledgement to diversity? That will be the core issue. Well, traditionally in Korea, there has been a lot of exclusivity. We really were not very inclusive of the others. And particularly in education, the same problem has continued to exist for a long time. Traditionally, our teaching methodology, our educational policies, if you think about the characteristics, the first thing is we set the goal for fostering human resources. And the first goal is everyone has to be the same. It has to be standardized. And there is a selection process. We usually select the same kinds of people and we teach them the same thing. From the industrial industrial revolution period, it made sense. But in the fourth industrial revolution era, I think we're off the line right now. So we are out of touch. So now we have to acknowledge our differences and we have to increase the contact points for these very different people utilizing technology. So I think that would be the core task that we have to deal with. So people with different backgrounds can come together in a single network to interact with each other, and that is going to lead to innovative ideas and endless possibilities which we could not imagine previously. Thank you.
Oh,
Yes, thank you. And let us now go on to Professor Lee Jin-kyu of Korea University of Technology and Education. Professor Lee Jin-kyu, now can you talk about Korea's talent development system that we have for the field of science and technology? Yes, well, I think that traditionally, when we think of the talents in the field of S&T, we develop them in the form of the letter T. So first of all, they would develop their expertise in their given fields, and then they would grow in the field in a linear way. And then when they reach the top, then that's when they start to seek an open mind and try to communicate and collaborate with people in the different fields. So I think that that was a traditional direction for fostering talents in science and technology. But on top of that, I want to add something more. Now, today we're talking about artificial intelligence and other things. And also Professor Che, he gave us a very insightful presentation. But on top of that, I think that we need talent that has sensitivity as well. So what does sensitivity mean? We have to be able to understand the difficulties that our fellow colleagues are experiencing, for example. Based on empathy, we should try to seek a solution for solving the problems that people are experiencing. So that kind of sensitivity-based education, or education that fosters sensitivity, is needed here in Korea. Now, I think that Dr. Henry also mentioned this, but traditionally, the way that we have been teaching students here in Korea has not been focusing on fostering sensitivity in the past, because I think that the education method or the methodology that we had was not an inquiry-based system, and we need to go in that direction. So we need to ask questions based on sensitivity, and then we need to have students find solutions for these problems on their own. Now, Minerva, for example, and ECOR, the examples that you've given, if you look at their education systems and programs, you can see that there is this inquiry-based program implemented. So the professors, they ask questions, and the students, they solve these problems on their own or form a team and solve these problems. So it's an inquiry-based learning system that these educational institutions have. And students, they contemplate over these questions and challenges, and they find the solutions on their own. And I think that this perhaps is the direction to go.
교수님.
Thank you very much. So there seems to be some overlap with the presentation with Professor Che Jae-sung. So empathy and a new education system that we need in the future. So we have received a lot of questions online, and this question in particular, I believe, represents the main message of our session. So I believe this will be very important for those who need to develop the policies and systems for fostering talents in the future. So I'd like to address this question to Professor Choi Jae-bung. So this is the question. The future talents, your success doesn't depend on getting good grades anymore, it seems. So in the future, the students of the future, what kinds of abilities should they grow? What kinds of efforts should they put in place in order to become talents in the new future? If you look at the current standards, if you get good SAT scores, it doesn't guarantee success. Yes, I agree with that. Just because you get good grades in college entrance exam doesn't mean that you will be very successful. So as I explained earlier, self-learning in areas where you are very interested in, you have great curiosity, then these people, these young kids will become better talents in the future. So previously in science and technology also, well, right now, Vitaly Buterin is the richest person in the world. From a young age, he was interested in math, and he listened to a lot of MOOCs, and he became interested in Bitcoin, in cryptocurrency. And so based on that, he developed the Ethereum. And so right now, objectively speaking, if you have a specific capability to create something that people want or are interested in, that's going to be very important. I'm not saying that the past practices will all be not important, but someone mentioned sensitivity earlier, but having that ability to converge the different areas of interest that people have, and if we have science and technology based on the needs of humanity, then we can have very talented human resources in the future.
많이 허락이 됐.
Now, if we had more time, we would have been able to continue this discussion. I think that rather than reaching a conclusion, we have been able to raise some very important questions and topics for us to further think about. So I ask for your understanding about not being able to carry on, but nevertheless, I would like to thank those who have given us this opportunity. I would like to thank our speaker, Professor Choi Jae-bung, and our panelists, and also everyone who are joining us here and also through our online channel. With this, we'd like to conclude session 1. Yes, thank you very much. Please, a big round of applause. Professor Yeom Han-woong, Professor Choi Jae-bung, Dr. Heinrich, Dr. Lee Jin-gu, Mr. David Gary, and Dr. Lee Soo-kyung. Thank you very much.